Hello everyone, good day. So for today's discussion, I will be discussing the one of the conditioning no under behaviorism approach or associative learning theory approach. So I will be discussing first the learning and classical conditioning. Okay, so what are the learning objectives in this lesson? At the end of the lesson, you will be able to identify the phases of classical conditioning, determine the proponent of identify also who is the proponent of the classical conditioning, and also one of the learning objectives no that I want you talaga is for you to create an example, a real life example related to in the classroom setting using classical conditioning. So let's start discussing classical conditioning. So classical conditioning is under behavioral approach, or sometimes it is associate it is I mean it is equivalent also no, with associative learning. So how do rewards and punishments throughout a person's life affect their behavior? Paano nga ba? So the behavioral perspective focuses on observable behaviors. Take note, behavioral it should be observable behaviors that can be measured objectively. Since behaviorism depicts observable and measurable aspects of human behavior, that means all behaviors are directed by a stimuli. And behaviorists believe, no, they believe that our behavior is related to our environment. It's nurture. And we can modify the behavior by modifying also the environment. So we learn to associate certain acts with the responses they produce. So just like for instances, so if the parents want their children to stop sucking their thumb, so the parents no will do, they will cover the thumb, or they will put something no in the thumb no para inigsak sa bata, it will taste bad, and and the child will realize na oops, pait ang lasa. So that's sucking the thumb produces a negative response, and that will eventually to stop doing it. The best example also of that one in real life scenario, I think you are familiar with kanang maglutas og bata, di ba? Usually, how many years old ba ginalutas ang bata sa pagpipi sa mama? Pa around 2 to 3 years old, di ba? But there are instances mga 4 to 5 years old nagatiti pa ang bata. So ang ginabuhat nga intervention sa parents no is that ginabutangan og pampapait nga lasa ang tutoy. That is why every time mo titi ang bata no sa tutoy sa mama, makatilaw siya og pait, makatilaw siya something bad no. So it will think no magthink ang bata ng negative response, and by that magstop na magtiti ang bata, and that's a kind of a behavioral approach, and that is a part also of a conditioning. Also, behaviorism suggests that learners must be actively engaged in both rewards and punishments, and also their rewards and punishment immediately for their involvement in the activity in order to achieve learning. Take note that learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior brought by experience. I do hope that you can still recall the debate versus the debate of nature versus nurture, because that's very important. I understand na wala mo naka-experience no conducting that kind of activity, but way back on my experience during my college days, way back on my first year college, we had a debate about this one, nature and nurture. Ano ba talaga yung ng bata? It ma-influence ba siya by nature or by nurture? So in this subject, no, remember that behavior is not 100% the result of nurture. Again, behavior is not 100% the result of nurture. For example, you might get better at soccer as you grow older, not only because you have learned to improve your skills, but also because your body is becoming physically stronger. In my case, no, I can relate with this one also that in our family, yeah, I'm not discriminating my siblings, no, my brothers and sisters. I'm the bunso in our family. I can say talaga that I am the only child, no. Ako talaga yung anak na mathematically inclined. Yung mga kuya ko, ate ko, mga hindi ba sila magaling sa math. Ako ginag-answers lang assignment sa una, no. So I can tell talaga na ako talaga yung medyo naiba. Kaya nga gina-joke ko yung parents ko na maampun man siguro ko man, no, kay ako ra may hawd sa math sa tong family. The rest di man sila mga hawd. So makana ako, no, in my observation, since my parents, even my lola, lolo, even in my, I mean ko na mga cousins, no, they are not mathematically inclined yung mga individuals. Makaingon jud ko nga walay hawd sila og math kaayo. So in my case, no, I can say talaga that it's because of my environment. Siguro due to constant practice at saka the influence of my teacher during elementary days, I really admire my teacher during elementary days, especially my grade 4 teacher. And because of that, because of the good approach, no, and I like the way my teacher, no, how he taught us mathematics, no. So that is why it improved my mathematical skills, and I was encouraged, I was motivated, and because of my environment, everything, that is why na-improve yung mathematical skills ko. Even though my kuya is a marine engineer, it's math pa rin, yung dalawang kuya ko, but I can tell talaga they are not mathematically inclined. Di ba sila mga howd, but for me, I do believe that one of the factors, the bigger factor talaga na naka-influence ako anong medyo okay akong performance sa math, it's because of the environment. Plus also with my sa tawag na kanang eagerness also to learn. Okay? Yeah. By the way, the father, let me inform you, the father of behaviorism is John B. Watson, ha? The father of behaviorism is John B. Watson. Kasi makalimot mo, ana. Now, before we will discuss to our main topic about classical conditioning, let's discuss first what's a stimulus. So, ano si stimulus? This is an event or sensation or experience that causes you to react. Since there are 5 senses, there are also 5 stimulus, no? We have visual stimulus. You see something, you react. Kita kag gwapo, react ka. Di ba? Kita kag pangit, react ka. Kita kag mga bad things, react ka. We also have olfactory stimulus. Makatimaho kag humot, maka-react ka. Makatimaho kag baho, maka-react ka. Di ba? Gustatory stimulus, using the sense of taste. You taste something, you react. Lami. Charot lang. You will react. Okay? Aslom, you will react. We have also auditory stimulus. You hear something, you react. Gilibak ka, nadunggani mo, you react. You hear a good news, you react. And lastly, kinesthetic stimulus. You feel something, you react. Nasakitan ka, gihapak ka sa likod, you react. Gihapak ka, of course, you react. Natusok ka og dagom, you react. Let's proceed to the main topic, no, for today's discussion, the classical conditioning. So this classical conditioning is a type of conditioning in which a neutral stimulus comes to bring about a response after it is paired with a stimulus that naturally brings that response. Technically, this asserts that individual learns when a previously neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with an unconditioned stimulus until a neutral stimulus evokes or desired response. We have the neutral stimulus and we also have unconditioned stimulus. When we say neutral stimulus, okay, or the plural for stimulus is stimuli, this stimulus does not naturally causes the subject to respond in a certain way, or this stimulus does not elicit a response. We also have unconditioned stimulus, a stimulus that naturally causes particular response. It automatically produces an emotional or physiological response. So learning to associate an automatic behavior or feeling with a stimulus. By the way, the proponent of this classical conditioning is Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov ang pagbasa ha. Ivan Pavlov. Hindi siya Pavlov. It's Pavlov. Okay? So he is the proponent of this classical conditioning. So he was studying at the aspects of the digestive process by observing salivation in dogs. So he conducted an experiment, and through observation, he was able to achieve this theory, the classical conditioning. So he made the observation that dogs began to salivate before the food arrived. For example, at the sight of food tray or sound of assistance or footsteps. So this work became foundation for classical conditioning and the behavioral approach to psychology. So there are three phases, no? There are three phases of, actually three phases lang ha. There are three phases of this classical conditioning. First phase, before conditioning has occurred. So ang gibuhat ni Ivan Pavlov ani, pagtingog sa bell, wala response ang dog. Again, pagtingog sa bell, wala response ang dog. Then, here it comes, the process of conditioning. Again, there are three phases: before conditioning, the process of conditioning, and lastly, after conditioning has occurred. So the first phase, before conditioning, gipatingog ang bell, the dog has no response at all. During the process, karon gipakita ni Ivan Pavlov ang meat. Pagkakita sa dog sa meat, naglaway ang dog. Then, pagkita sa dog sa meat, naglaway ang dog. So, that's unconditioned response, the salivation. The meat is considered as unconditioned stimulus. Then, the meat is considered as unconditioned stimulus that makes the dog salivate. Karon, di ba? Pagtingog sa bell, wala response ang iro. Pagkakita sa meat sa iro, pag-present nimo sa meat, naglaway ang iro. Karon gisabay nimo, pagtingog sa bell, gitagaan nimo ang iro og meat. So every time magtingog ang bell, ginatagaan nimo ang iro og meat. Again, every time patingogon nimo ang bell, tagaan nimo ang iro og meat. Okay? Now after many processes, many times na mong gi-perform, no, tingog mo ang bell, gan yung aso, yung meat, gipakita mo sa ero, gipakaon nimo, na conditioned na siya. The bell is considered as conditioned stimulus. That is why, pag mo tingog ang bell, ang iro karon maka-realize na, uy, nani pagkaon. Because during the process of condition, imong gi-train or no, gi-associate nimo doon na every time patingog nimo ang bell, gitigaan man nimo ang iro og meat. So karon, after the conditioning, every time patingog nimo ang bell, every time ang dog makadungog og rang sa bell, maglaway siya. Again, every time makatingog ang dog sa rang sa bell, maglaway siya. That's after conditioning. In our real life, no, we can have that one also, no, in a real life example. Sa una, nagkauntag mangga, lami kay no, sa lami kay mangga makita ginasaw sa suka. Karon makakita lang tag pictures sa mangga, maglaway na ta. That's conditioning. Again, of course, nagkaon man jud tag mangga no, lami kay kaon sa mangga. So anytime or even sa palok, no, anytime makakita tag picture or advertisement lang sa mangga, or so ba, makita nag-picture sa mangga, maglaway na ta. That's already conditioning. That's classical conditioning. Also, kaning alarm clock, di ba? Do you think you have been classically conditioned to respond to anything in a certain way? Yes, just like this one. If I hear the sound of an alarm clock, my body becomes tense and my mood becomes unhappy. So it's not really the alarm that I hate, it's waking up. Let me give you a scenario of mine, no, about that one. Sa una, mga around 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. ginapa-alarm jud nako na siya. 5 to or 5:30 a.m. So consistent akong pag-alarm 5 to 5:30 a.m. Karon nakalimot ko og alarm. But because nag-change akong body clock, that every 5:30 a.m. bisag walay tingog sa alarm, makamata ko. It's because nasanay na na-train na siya, na-condition siya. Yan. That's conditioning. So another example. You need to get a series of shots. The nurse always says, this won't hurt a bit. So before giving you the shots, but the nurse is inexperienced and always gives really painful shots. So, ang bata daw ni adto og hospital para magpa-inject. Yan na ang nurse. Yan, injectan ta ka, dili man ni sakit. Unya pag tusok bitaw sa injection, sakit gud kaayo gud. Mao to, ang bata no, every time nakakita siya og dagom or every time nakakita siya og maingnan siya og ano, every time ingnon siya sa mga doctor or dentist or I mean nurse or medical staff no, na di man siya sakit, mahadlok na ang bata because of that experience no, of the child no nga igo lang siya giingnan na dili ni siya sakit pero pag tusok kay sakit di ay. So later on, if mo ato ang bata sa dentist niya, tapos ingnon siya sa dentist niya na di man siya sakit gang. In that experience na in that prior experience niya no, yung pagtusok sa dagom o pag-ingon pa lang niya na dili sakit, nahadlok na siya. Similar case also sa love life, di ba? You can relate classical conditioning in relationship. Okay? Kung ikaw, ginapasakitan na ka, of course, what do you expect? Diba? Naka-trauma ka, naka mga, I mean, experience na mahadlo ka mo sulod na because of what you have experienced before, unless kung marupok ka, mo na nasala. Charot. Anyways, John B. Watson conducted an experiment. No, we have this so-called Little Albert experiment. So in the 1920s, John B. Watson classically conditioned a human baby to experience a fear at the sight of white rats, and as a result of stimulus generalization. Okay, by the way, stimulus generalization means this is a process by which the conditioned response is transferred to other stimuli similar to the original conditioned stimulus. Again, stimulus generalization is a process by which the conditioned response is transferred or being transferred to other stimuli similar to the original conditioned stimulus. An example of this one is itong gibuhat ni John B. Watson. So ang bata, gipa-experience ni John B. Watson na mahadlok ang bata sa white rats, small white rats. So later on, pag makakita ang bata og small na mga bagay, small na mga hayop, mahadlok na ang bata because gi-associate man gud sa bata na anything, gi-generalize niya ba? Gi-generalize sa bata na anything na gamay, okay? Anything na gamay or small furry animals kay kuan, kanang hadlok, mahadlok siya because of that one. Pero dili siya mahadlok og dagko kay based sa iyahang during the experiment sa small furry animals lang man siya mahadlok, dili man siya sa sa mga dagko. Another case is ito. Kung ang isang bata daw nakakita og kanang nakita siya gamay na hayop, tapos na upat ka tiil, again, nakita siya gamay na hayop na upat ka tiil na nag-backline niya, nay balahibo, na nay bungot dire, ana. Tapos yan ang mama na, okay, that is a cat. Okay, that is a cat. Karon, pagka next day, nakakita ang bata og similar na kita siya og kanang hayop na gamay, na ibungot, na ay balahibo, na dalunggan upat ka buktiil, na ang bata na, oh mommy, that's a cat. But to think, kato yung nakita sa bata, dili to cat, actually ilaga to. So that is a stimulus generalization. That is why as a parent, it is very important talaga that we need to teach our children the appropriate names talaga ng isang bagay, proper naming. So parents at the age of mga around less than 5 years old or 6 years old, we should that's the crucial part talaga ng parents, especially naming, identifying, also disciplining the children. So after a stimulus has been conditioned, produce a particular response, stimuli that are similar to original stimulus may produce the same response. So the greater the similarity between two stimuli, the greater the likelihood that stimulus generalization will occur. Yung binigay ko na example kanina, that's stimulus generalization. Gana. Baby Albert became afraid of all small furry animals. Pero dili siya mahadlok sa iro, sa big black dog because dili man small ang dog. So because of that experiment, Baby Albert generalized that all small furry animals kaya kadlukan because of that experience. Now, kani, a good question. What do you think would happen if a dog that had been classically conditioned to salivate at the ringing of bell then never received food again when the bell was rung? Kanagong, di ba, gitrain mo ang dog every time na mo bell ang ring, mo ring ang bell ang ring. Every time mo ring ang bell, nakapagaon ni hatag. Karon, masigid na kag bell, wala kay pagaon ni hatag. Magsigid na kag bell. Ginapaasa nimo ang iro. What will happen? Okay, what will happen? Ng ano na, where's my food? Ang tawag natin dyan is extinction. Again, ang tawag natin dyan is extinction. So when a previously conditioned response decreases in frequency and eventually disappears, that's extinction. Okay? So, mura ko na sa itong kinabuhi, no? Sa love life. Ginapaasa na lang ta. So what will happen? Diba? So the extinction na mahitabo. So this extinction, this is a process by which a conditioned response is lost. Okay? Same sa dog. Sige kag bell, walay pagkaon. So the response will eventually disappear and that is extinction. But however, we have this spontaneous recovery. So after a conditioned response become extinct, the response can sometimes re-emerge, mabalik siya, no? After a period of time has passed with no further conditioning. Example, people often wondered if little Albert might still occasionally experience fear of animals as an adult, but sad to say, little Albert died at the age of 6. Take note of this one, that classical conditioning relates to involuntary, automatic reactions that we have to a stimulus. And you cannot be classically conditioned to perform a voluntary action. Just like there is a different concept called operant conditioning that refers to the ability to make us more or less likely to perform a certain voluntary action. We have a separate topic for this, that's operant conditioning under B.F. Skinner. Okay. Another example of classical conditioning is this. Once Jane had the flu, she was eating strawberries and she felt nauseated and threw up soon after. So, nagsakit siya, then nagkaon siya strawberry, nagsuka siya. Weeks later, naayos siya sa yung sakit. Naayos siya sa yung sakit. But, pag mukaon siya strawberry, she felt sick again. Again, pag mukaon siya strawberry because of the experience nga, nikaon siya strawberry nga nagsuka siya during pagsakit niya, then later on, naayo na siya, but every time mukaon siya strawberry, she felt sick again. That is what we call food aversion. Again, food aversion ang tawag ana. Jane learned to associate the feeling of being sick with eating strawberries. That's food aversion. This one, we have this. Mark's girlfriend always wore the same perfume, and whenever Mark was with his girlfriend, she made him happy. One day, Mark was shopping at the mall, and he walked through the perfume department. He smelled his girlfriend's perfume and felt happy. Bisag wala ko diyang girlfriend, but because of that smell, he felt happy. So Mark learned to associate the smell of the perfume with the happiness he feels around his girlfriend. Another example of this one is the acquisition. Acquisition is part of classical conditioning. Again, acquisition is part of classical conditioning in which this is a process by which the conditioned response is acquired from the experience of another person. And this is acquired from the experience of another person. So just like this one, Ben's little brother Lenny likes to torment him by screaming and shooting him with a Nerf gun. Again, Ben's little brother Lenny likes to torment him by screaming and shooting him with a Nerf gun. One day, Lenny screamed but didn't shoot Ben with his Nerf gun. Niscream lang siya. But Ben flinched anyways because of the experience na every time torment siya by screaming and shooting screaming then shooting because of that experience. So Ben flinched anyway. So every time mo shout lang siya, mo scream dahil si Lenny, mo flinch na siya because Ben learned to associate the sound of Lenny screaming with being hit by a dart. In a real life example for this acquisition na example, kanang abusado nga uyab. Okay? Mo it will cause trauma. Kung ikaw tao, kung nakay-uyab, then imong uyab kay medyo violente, so ginapasakitan ka, no, ginaabuso ka, ginapasakitan ka. So ginahapak ka, ginasumbag ka. Karon, gibulagan nimo uyab. Karon nang uyab na po kay bagong uyab. Pero anytime na raise lang og kamo ta, of course, based on your trauma no na-experience ka ginahapak kasi mo uyab, like ginasumbag ka, like ana jud ginahapak violent mo uyab, karon nakauyab kag another one. Karon nitaas lang gani ang kamot sa mong uyab, like but because of the experience no, because of the trauma na gihatag si mong ex-boyfriend na abuse ka, igo lang ni raise igo lang mo akbay imong uyab sa imuha bagong uyab, igo lang mo raise mo high imong uyab sa imuha, murag sa imong feeling kay mulikay ka because you have that trauma no na naagpabilin. Every time no murag gi-associate nimo na every time mo raise na ang kamot sa imong uyab, mulikay na ka because sa una ginapasakitan mo kasi imong uyab. So that's very alarming no. I do hope dili nga na yung mga uyab o yung mga partners. Another example is this. Lily grew up in orphanage where she was neglected and mistreated by the staff. The orphanage was located in a big, historic manor house. As an adult, Lily still feels emotional pain when she visits that house because she is associating her negative memories with the place. In fact, Lily feels upset when she goes into any big old house because of stimulus generalization. Gi-generalize niya nga every time because of her experience no sa dagko ng mga balay. Pag makasulod sa dagko ng balay, mahadlok na siya because of the stimulus generalization. And that would be all. So hoping no that you've learned no from our discussion today. And let me remind you that in classroom setup no magtudlo lang mo pohon, it's very important no na dili jud nato I mean we need to consider talaga, we need to be more we need to extend no the patience sa atong estudyante. Let me remind you about this one. Kung manawag mong estudyante, ayaw niyo pakiulawi ang estudyante. Again ha, ayaw niyo pakiulawi ang estudyante. Let me give you a classroom scenario no of this classical conditioning. Ang bata very participative sa klase. Nag-raise hand siya to ask questions, to share insight no during elementary days. One time iyang teacher nangutana, gitawag siya, nitubag siya, pero yung teacher gingnan siya og mali man na gang. Because of that statement, naulawan ang bata. Hindi na siya mali man na pataka nag-answer. Because of that experience of that child, pagka next meeting, next year level, pag abot niya high school, madala na niya, maulaw na siya mag-raise og hand no because of that experience. Kaya naulawan man siya. Okay? Again, pag elementary niya, ta siya kamot, then gayang na siya sa teacher na mali ang tubag na anak. So based on that experience, mahadlok na siya mo share, mahadlok na siya og mo raise og hand kay basig walawan na pud siya kung may siya mali. Okay? Nanay sort of generalization nga nanay sort of generalization na hitabo nga ingana ta ng teacher. So hoping as future educator, we need to appreciate the answers of our students despite na mali or siya o tama. We need to learn how to process the answers of our students. Dili kay kanang we should, I mean, dili kay ingon nato diretson ay mali man na, dili dapat ingana ha kay it will cause trauma sa part sa atong estudyante. Take note, students nowadays are very sensitive. Okay? So that would be all for our discussion about classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. For the next video, I will be discussing operant conditioning. See you and goodbye, everyone.